Good afternoon. My name is Makoti Mashilo, a PGCE student at the University of Pretoria. I do methodology of economics. At this point, I'm at Refile Secondary School in Limpopo, and I'm going to teach economics class for grade 12C. The topic of today is foreign exchange market. The table of lesson that I'm going to give is theoretical. In the foreign exchange market, we found various role players whereby the aim of this market is to make sure that international trade takes place. Where does this international trade takes place? It takes place in a society or in a particular way that foreign exchange transactions take place. For instance, if there is a guy who wants to invest his or her money overseas, that particular individual must make sure that he or she exchanges the type of money that he's got in his own country so that he can be able to purchase whatever kind of goods or service or the kind of investment he or she is interested in that particular country. That's point number one. So we as economic students need to understand exactly what is the meaning of the foreign exchange market. Now, point number one, what is foreign exchange market? My idea about foreign exchange market is it is a place whereby foreign transactions takes place. The foreign exchange transaction take place in that particular market. With who? With the foreign exchange market role players. What are the foreign exchange market role players? Foreign exchange market role players are different banks, are different financial institutions, are different countries which deal in whatever goods or service are traded in that market. Right, now what we need to do, we need to understand what is an exchange rate. Exchange rate is the purchasing power of a currency in terms of how much of other currency it can buy. For instance, we can talk about the rand against the US dollar. At the moment, we have $1 which is equals to 14 rands. In other words, if you want to exchange what the money that we have or the money that we use in South Africa, what we will do, we need to exchange that rand, our South African rand, to the US dollar. And the US dollar is the main trading currency. The main trading currency, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, in most transactions that are coded in the foreign exchange market, the US dollar is dominantly used, simply because the US dollar's economy dominates most of the country or the whole international trade market, or simply foreign exchange market. Right. What is the foreign currency? What are the main foreign currencies that are used in the market? The money of another currency, for instance, in the United States, they use the US dollar. In South Africa, we use the South African rand. There is also the euro, which is used in the European foreign exchange market. Again, in the British market, they use the so-called Great British Pound. That is the pound which was normally used in South Africa before, during the British colonization process. Right, we have different currencies. For instance, we've got the Australian dollar, we have the Canadian dollar, we have the Japanese yen, and others. Right, the description of foreign exchange markets. In short, many people like to say forex market. The buying and selling of foreign currency or currency trade occurs on the foreign exchange market. Economists develop this market to facilitate international trade. What do they mean by economists develop this market to facilitate international trade? This is the meaning. If you are in a particular country and that country's economy is part of the global market simply means you are part of the economies, or simply saying you are affected by what is happening in another country. The South African market is affected by what is happening in the United States. It also gets affected by what is happening in other countries that trade with South Africa. There is a catch though. There is a role which is played by the central bank in these days. The central bank in our country, which is the South African Reserve Bank, plays a very important role in the foreign exchange market, in the sense that initially the Reserve Bank used to control what is happening in the forex market by doing what? By fixing the exchange rate. Like, for instance, they'll say for this period we are going to trade under $1, which will be equal to 14 rand. But that does not happen anymore. So what is currently happening in our country or in anywhere in the world is the kind of market the kind of exchange rate that is determined by the market. It is now called free floating or flexible exchange rate. What do I mean by that? The market forces of supply and demand determine a free floating or flexible exchange rate and maintain the exchange rate at the equilibrium level. The meaning of what I've just said is the market forces, which are demand and supply, are the ones that determine the exchange rate. In other words, if there is a high demand for a particular currency, let me use an example of the US dollar. If the US dollar is demanded by many role players in the foreign exchange market, obviously the US dollar's price will go up. In economics, we say the currency appreciates, meaning that the currency is now stronger. It will be expensive to buy that currency because it is strong. Or if the currency depreciates, meaning that currency becomes cheaper. Therefore, it will be cheaper to buy that particular currency if you want to invest or you want to buy goods of that particular country. It is called an exchange rate that is allowed to fluctuate, also known as dirty float, because of the intervention by central banks. Yes, I remember this in 2008. Reserve Bank saw a situation whereby the demand for US dollar was going extremely high. Well, so what did they do? They intervened. They managed to control the rand dollar exchange rate. They did that secretly because once people know, or once the market knows that Reserve Bank is in the market, you'll hear people saying, "Yay, SAB is in the market. What is happening?" They might think that the Reserve Bank wants a specific price, wants a specific exchange rate whereby that dollar or the rand dollar exchange rate is going to be fixed. So my learners, please be aware that Reserve Bank plays an important role in the foreign exchange market. Again, let me take you a little bit backwards. South African Reserve Bank implements the monetary policy. The monetary policy is one of the Reserve Bank's main functions. The Reserve Bank does that on behalf of government. On behalf of government, because the Reserve Bank is not owned independently. It was created by an act of parliament whereby the National Treasury or the Department of Finance mandated the central bank to perform certain functions. I hope that is clear. Again, let's go to the teaching strategies and techniques that I want to use in this lesson plan. I want my learners to participate fully. Why do I want my learners to participate fully? It's simply because I want to use constructivism learning theory, whereby interactive learning strategy will be used. Learners must talk more so that their prior knowledge can be tested and polished. Correct? Now we talk of the questions and answers. Questions and answers, I want my learners to fully participate in that. What do I mean by that? I want my learners to also ask questions where they don't understand. But me, as their teacher, I'm also going to make sure that I ask them questions so that I can test their prior knowledge, and I can make sure that whatever knowledge they have, is in line with what the textbook says and what CAP says. And that's simply called constructivism. What is the literature that I'm going to use? I'm definitely going to use the literatures from different sources. I'm going to talk much about what is contained in the South African Reserve Bank quarterly bulletin. The name says it all. It says the quarterly bulletin. That means it is issued every quarter. It contains the information that happened in the previous 3 months. But remember, the quarterly bulletin is not a forecast of what can happen. Yes, a little bit of focus is contained in the document, but mostly is what happened in the previous months. For instance, we are going to talk about the balance of payments. The balance of payments is an account which is kept to record the transactions that happen in the foreign exchange market. It's not an account which contains information of a person buying a bag of oranges or potatoes wherever is sold in the local market. No, this is a record or account of what happens in the foreign exchange market. That is why it's called balance of payments. All right. I'm also going to use the newspaper articles. I'm also going to use the textbooks which are prescribed material for grade 12s. The prescribed materials for grade 12, for instance, one that I have and that I'm going to use and show that I'm going to get the information from is called the Clever Economics. I like the name Clever. I think it contains clever information, yes, because you can't be an economist if you are not one of the clever people in the country. Right, I'm also going to use the economic study guide that is also provided by Refila Secondary School. Refila Secondary School obviously did not produce these study guides on their own. They got some of the study guides from the Department of Basic Education and from other sources. And this is very important to make sure that one has more sources to refer to. There is also internet or Google which can explain very well, but the thing is, if you are going to use Google or you are going to use the internet, you must make sure that you use the scholarly search so that you can know who is the author. Otherwise, one will be charged with plagiarism. Again, what I've realized is we need to use the previous question papers. The previous question papers will help a lot because as a teacher, you need to know that you don't spend too much time on a particular topic that only carries less than a percentage of questions in the trial or the test or the final examination, which is going to be written at the end of this year. So yes, it's very critically important that the previous question papers are discussed. You must show the learners how you must answer the questions, how one must answer the questions that can be found or that are going to be found in the examinations. It is very critical, very important, because some learners may not be able to know how to answer the questions. For instance, in this textbook, they talk about the positives, which are the advantages. I remember I gave them a task last week. I said, tabulate these two concepts. In other words, I wanted to know the difference between the two concepts. The difference between the two concepts must be answered in a table form. Some students were confused and said, but sir, what is tabular? Therefore, it's very important to discuss the previous question paper simply because